Welcome to the Untied Podcast, where we unravel the knots of life with faith, wisdom, and encouragement, because together we're here to untie from tradition and embrace truth through powerful Bible teaching. My name is Garrett. I'm one of the hosts of this show, and I am here with one of my very good friends, Tyler King. Unfortunately, Corey is not able to be with us today. We do want to remember him. His mother had knee replacement surgery, and he is needing to care for her, and we are certainly praying for her recovery and Corey as he helps her and their family. So unfortunately, Corey is not with us today, but we hope to have him back next week as we close this season out with our season finale. It is hard to believe that we have made it through our second season, or will have next week. So once our season is done, we'll have the summer off, and then we'll come back to you in the fall. So, but we are glad to have you with us today. We've got a great topic today. We're going to talk about ministry. In fact, that is the title of this episode. Let's talk about ministry. And we're going to look at kind of the good, the bad, the ugly, what we love about it, why we think that it is a worthy work to go into, maybe some options of how to do that if you're wanting to go full-time, part-time, whatever. So I'm sure we'll talk about a number of things regarding that. But first, before we get into our conversation, Tyler, what's been cooking, man?
Hey, just about everything, it seems like. We're ramping into June, and there's lots going on. So we're headed back to Colorado on Friday. We're going to drive back. I'll preach Sunday morning at the Castle Rock Church of Christ. They do a big family encampment.
Yeah.
And so Matthew Morine will be out there. I think all the elders will be at the encampment. So there's only about, he said, anywhere from 30 to 50 will stay behind and be at the building. So he said, we really needed just a B team guy. So we're going to, so I'll be preaching that Sunday morning. It works out. My family still lives in Castle Rock. And so he thought, well, there's an opportunity where you could preach and have even more purpose, then why don't you come out, see your family, spend Memorial Day weekend in Colorado. So we'll do that. Awesome. We'll be back probably next Tuesday or Wednesday. So right now, Natalie and I always do this. Before we go on a trip, we just try and eat everything in the refrigerator. Anything that's about to go bad, we just, so it's like, all right, is this going to be good on the Blackstone? I don't know. So we'll throw it on there and
try it out.
Hope for the best.
That's awesome. Well, last night I did, we're not going anywhere right now, but we kind of did the same thing. We had several things that we needed to cook. So I cooked 5 ribeyes. I cooked 2 or 3 deals of smoked sausage, and also did 2 packages of chicken tenders, all on the smoker. So wound up pretty good. Tried a couple new seasonings. Have you tried the Blackstone? Actually has a steak seasoning. Have you tried that?
Oh, no, I haven't.
It's not bad. It's a little bit different. It's kind of the more chunky kind instead of a rub or whatever. But we tried that out. It was pretty good. And then of course I went back on one of the steaks and just did regular old Creole, man. Just put it on there. I kind of like the spicy a little bit. But it was really good. It was really good. So they also have go ahead.
Oh, you're good. My smoker is out of commission right now. I went to go plug it in the other night. I was going to do some burgers on it. I'd seen something online where there was a new technique for burgers. I thought, well, that'd be good. I'll give that a shot. And went to plug it in, and it threw the breaker.
Oh, so no.
I remember a few episodes ago, I said, man, pit bosses are so easy to work on. They are easy to work on. Unfortunately, if you get cheap parts, they are cheap parts. So I think it's the actual main board. I bought it off Amazon. It was like $20.
Yeah.
And hey, it made it a year before it gave out. So
yeah,
I don't know if I'll try and get like a warranty on that. See if I can say, hey, this lasted a year. Send me another one.
Did you order it from Pit Boss, or did you get it like off of Amazon or something?
Yeah, it was an Amazon special.
Yeah.
But at that point, when I was rebuilding that smoker, I was just trying to get parts to get it to work because I didn't know what was wrong with it originally.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had basically ordered every part for the pit boss. So the igniter, the fan, the auger, and the actual motherboard itself. And I just started plugging pieces in to see what worked and what didn't work. It ended up being the motherboard.
Yeah.
So I used that. But I know Pit Boss, if you go on their website, you can actually upgrade the original controller to be a Wi-Fi controller. So I thought, well, maybe that'll be something. Maybe this is my excuse to get the Wi-Fi controller. That would be so nice just to put something on, like a big pork shoulder or something, and then to be away from the house. As long as the Pit Boss is basically out in the middle of the yard. If it catches fire, it'll just burn itself down. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, when I bought my Traeger originally, I went in there and knew what I wanted, and that was one of the things that I wanted was the Wi-Fi, just for that reason. That if I was doing a brisket or something throughout the night, that I could check the temperature, which is really nice. But I got in there and I found the one that I was looking at, and then just didn't pay attention and bought it, and got home and realized that I had gotten. It was the right one, but it had the wrong control, so it didn't have the Wi-Fi. But that's all right. It still works out pretty good. It's probably better for me to go out and get up and not be lazy and go out there anyway. But either way, it's good. But that Wi-Fi is a pretty cool deal. Just to know, mainly to know what the internal temp all the time is. But you can buy those separate thermometers and put in there. So that's
it's really nice if you're doing a smoke throughout the night to make sure that it doesn't stall out or anything. I mean, it's going to stall, but that it doesn't quit out. Or there's been times where I was smoking in my Masterbuilt upright smoker, and the power had gone out at our house overnight. I was smoking a turkey. Power had gone out, so the smoker just shuts off. Well, I was able to track, okay, when did it shut off and at what temperature and where is it now? And the turkey went from like 150 to 140 for like 30 minutes. So I was like, okay, I know that I'm still good. Plugged it back in, got it up and going, and we were good to go from there. Yeah. So yeah, sometimes that'll save your whole meal.
Yeah, that's nice. Especially, have you ever run out of pellets before?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I've done that twice, and both times I was just not even thinking, right, and just didn't even check how many I had in there, and just worried about getting the meat on and all that stuff, and getting it to temp, and just a lot of things going on. Didn't even check, get out there. One was like I went there an hour and a half after, at least an hour and a half after, because it was bone dry and cold. So, I mean, it's got to be somewhere around there, but we were able to save that situation. But yeah, I'm paranoid now. Every time I put something on there, make sure I've got got those pellets in there ready to go.
Yep.
That'll ruin a meal in a hurry.
Well, kind of smoking and cooking related, and you'll see where I'm tying this in. I'm scared to go out to the Pit Boss and to work on it because growing up in Colorado, we just didn't have a lot of bugs.
Yep.
And we certainly didn't have anything like mud daubers. And so these are all new for me. So I see these little mud nests everywhere, and I'm thinking, good night, those things are terrifying.
Yeah.
And so I've been kind of getting rid of the nest and trying to destroy them as much as I can, get them out of here. Well, Natalie woke up the other night, and she went over to the kitchen, and in the sink, there was a brown recluse.
Oh.
And I thought, oh, man, hopefully we don't get an infestation, or hopefully there's just not more of them. So I acted quickly. I sprayed, again, the perimeter of the house. I did that a few months ago. Got some of those sticky traps out and was doing some research. Well, mud daubers, number one, they don't really like to sting humans. And they're not like your normal bee or like wasp, where when they sting, it just stings the fire out of you.
Yeah.
They're pretty calm, they look the most intense of all of the flying stinger animals. But number two, they prey on brown recluse. And so I thought, okay, well, I guess I'll keep the mud daubers around. So anytime that I see a nest, I just see a little thing that's going to help us out in the future.
Yeah.
But I guess mud daubers, wolf spiders, and something else, they'll prey on the brown recluse. So I'm all for it.
Yeah. We have more wolf spiders around than anything, I think, over here. I mean, we definitely have mud daubers, but especially right now with all the rain we've been having, and I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I've been seeing more wolf spiders around the house, at least. But when we lived in Piedmont, we had yellow jackets like crazy, just like crazy. And so we would have to had a fifth wheel when we lived over there, and I'd have to check the slides and every little spot, go up under the front there and just check everything, and especially in the air conditioner, you had to check in there to see if there was anything that was built up, and then get rid of those things. But those are hardcore. But yeah, mud daubers I really haven't had a whole lot of issue with, even if they're around. Whenever they leave, you just clean it off.
Yep. Did you ever see that video that kind of surfaced? Steve Shinner, of course, he's a big bee guy. I guess someone was doing like a home renovation out in Northwest Arkansas, and behind the wall, when they peeled back the wall, there were just all of these honeycombs of these bees. And so they called the local bee guy, Steve, to come out. And so he was on HGTV for I don't know, 30 minutes or whatever.
Yep.
But that's like my worst nightmare. Oh, I couldn't do that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And did you watch the whole show? I was giving him a hard time because, they found, I can't remember if it was right next to that big pillar on the front of the house on that porch or whatever. And they took that one part off, and then once they got that done, they did something else to the house, and then they were trying to, I don't remember what they were doing. I'd have to go back and watch it, but one of those pillars or something like fell over, and I called him. I was like, "What did you do to that house?" He goes, "I didn't do anything." So it was, I gave him a hard time. It was pretty funny, but yeah, that was a huge hive that they had in there.
Yep.
So that was pretty cool. Pretty cool to get on TV like that. But he knows a lot about bees. He has taken a big, huge interest in that, and is actually doing some pretty cool stuff right now that hopefully in the future some people will know about and see. But that was definitely a cool deal. So. Mm-hmm. Well, Tyler, we got a lot of conversation to have about a very cool subject. But first, before we get into our subject, we want to do this would be our episode to do the Give Us Your Best Books. So before we get into that, let's go ahead and hop into that. You have a couple of books you want to recommend to some folks to check out, purchase, read, download, whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one, I don't have it in hard copy, but I have it in my Logos. They'll have sales every once in a while on their Faith Life website. And this is one that was definitely interesting to me just from the title, but then I saw who the author was, and I thought, okay, I like that even more. I'm a big fan of Michael Heiser, the late Michael Heiser. I think he passed away 2 years ago now, 2023. But he's got a book called I Dare You Not to Bore Me with the Bible, where he goes into some of the more fascinating, extraordinary things and stories of the Bible. I feel like a lot of people, when they pick this up, it's not a comic book. It's not modern language even. And sometimes that will make people take the side that it's a boring book. But it's not. It's actually very fascinating. There's a lot that goes into it. But I also recognize that I'm a student and that I'm going into advanced degrees with Scripture. So I'm just kind of naturally enamored by some of that stuff. And maybe for some other people, they're like, oh, man, I try and get into daily Bible reading, but I end up getting lost in it. Or, truthfully, maybe even being bored with it.
Yeah.
So this book is really good for that. The other one is kind of another author that I've brought up before, but he's got a book called Practicing the Way by John Mark Comer. And Practicing the Way is this whole idea of what does it look like to actually follow Jesus and have that in your life, rather than it just being, a compartment of your life. So many people have like their job compartment and their family compartment and friends and hobbies. And then next to all those is this Christianity compartment. And so when you study scripture, you're filling up that bucket. And when you pray, you're filling up that bucket. But really, practicing the way is so much more than that. It should be, the big container in which all of those other things are placed. Hey, there you go.
Yeah, I got one right here.
So he's got a lot of really good, practical, easy to understand stuff. Sometimes I think when you pick up a book like that, the author can be very ambiguous, like follow God. Yeah, but how do I follow God? And so he's going to hit on some of those things. So really appreciated that book.
Yeah, I have not read all the way through this. I'm really bad about I'll get a series of books and I'll start reading one and get really into it. And then I get into a study for something and then I don't pick it up for a little bit. And that's kind of been where I'm at with this one. I've read about a quarter of the way through it and I need to pick it back up and finish it out. But I have really enjoyed what I have read so far in this. In fact, on one of these opening pages, just like you said, he just starts out here, come follow me, but then he goes into the how. So very good. Have you ever done a study on that phrase, the way?
Yeah, especially in Acts. That's a cool study.
It is. It is. I actually brought that up in a sermon last week, and I didn't do a study on it, but I encouraged everybody to do a study on it. And I just threw out probably maybe 3 or 4 different places that it was mentioned. And it's very, very cool. Very, very cool study. All right. So the first one that I'll throw out there is I've done a couple Steve Farrar books, I think, so far this season. Again, Steve Farrar is not a member of the church. He's a great writer. He has a lot of great things to say. This is something that, like everything, no matter who you read and you pick the bones out. But there is this book called Anchorman. I don't know if you've ever seen that, Tyler, or heard of that, read it. This is a really, really good book. Steve Farrar is very family-oriented. In fact, right on the cover it says, how a father can anchor his family in Christ for the next 100 years. And he begins talking about, he goes into the chain that connects to an anchor for a major aircraft carrier, and has a great illustration on this chain, and he discusses the family chain. He actually looks at, it's the Dwight D. Eisenhower aircraft carrier, which at one point was the largest aircraft carrier that we had. It was one of the largest ships in the world, and he discusses the weight and how every chain link is important, and we've kind of heard those illustrations before. But that's how he begins the book, and he discusses the importance of generational faith, and the weak link in that can separate the chain from the anchor. And it's just a really, really good read. If you're interested in a good read like this and want to know better ways and good thoughts and great ideas of how to drive your spirituality within your family culture, to have generational faithfulness, this is a great book to read and check out. The other one, I cannot remember. Next year, Tyler, we are keeping a log. We just have to keep a log of what we've done so far. And so if I have done this book before, I apologize, but it's a good one nonetheless. It's by Aubrey Johnson. It's called The Seed Principle, and it looks at the parable of the sower. The way that he looks at the parable is really, really awesome. Breaks down every single part of it and has so many things that he points out. And there's been one thought that has, there's a lot of thoughts, but one thought that really has stuck out out to me, which has to do with decision making in life and where you are. And one of the statements that he makes in that book is where you are right now in your life is a result of every decision that you've ever made. And the way that he presents that idea in the book just really, really hit me. And in many ways, it was kind of a turning point for me. Why am I where I am? And so it does a lot to, kind of dismantle your thought process about yourself. Because we have this kind of, many ways, a lot of people, kind of lie to themselves and pretend they're in a better place than they are, or whatever. But that's something that kind of dismantled that idea for me. That it's a really, you'd really need a reality check, a harsh reality check of where you are. There's a lot of discussion about the heart, and of course that relates to the soil and all that kind of stuff. So this is just really, really, it's a great read. Aubrey is, one of my favorite authors. I just love how he writes. I love his thought process. And so that would be a great book to check out if you're looking for a good read out there. So we will link both of those in the show notes for you. So that if you guys are interested in purchasing those, you sure can. And I do want to throw this out there that any book that we have recommended on this show this season, nobody has asked us to throw these out there. These are books that we have read, have connection to, and think would be good for you. And that's the only reason that we are putting those out there. So don't think that there's anything else going on. Not that anybody does, but I just want to make that clear that these are books that we actually read and enjoy and have helped us in some way. So with that being said, Tyler, let's go ahead and move on to our main discussion, and let's talk about ministry. Yeah. So in our show notes, there's a lot of things that we've got in there, kind of discussion ideas, but let's start here. What made you realize or decide this is the direction that you want to go? How about that? Let's just start right there.
Yeah. I remember when I was welding, there were a lot of things that played into this factor, but what made me... So there was a moment in my life where I questioned everything, and it was somewhat of a deconstruction. I don't want to say deconstruction because I think deconstruction in our world has become a lot more violent and aggressive toward just abandoning faith altogether.
Yeah.
But there was a point in my life where I questioned my own faith and I wanted to find truth. Well, now that you find truth, that's good for yourself, but there's still a process that I went through of what do I want to do with this truth other than just live it out. And I remember having this thought as I was driving to work one day when I was welding of, I know everything that God has, I know a lot of things that God has done for me, I should say. I don't know everything that he's done because I think he's still working behind the scenes to do things that I don't know about. But I know what God has done for me, and I know what I've done for him. And even though the two will never match up, there's this significant void in my life of me not doing anything for him. And naturally, I think in a relationship, when you love someone and you appreciate someone, you want to do things for them. And so that kind of pushed me into wanting to pursue ministry a little bit more of, he's blessed me with knowing truth, and I can take my life and hopefully move it in a direction that others can also know truth as well. We'll talk about this a little bit later on, I'm sure, but in Daniel chapter 12 and verse 3, you don't have to turn there, but He says, "Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever." That idea that Daniel uses the Hebrew word olam, of forever. If you want to add purpose to your life, and if you want to show God the appreciation because of what he's done for you, I think ministry is a great opportunity for that. But I'm sure, like you, because you come from kind of a background of secular work as well, and so I think these are kind of cool vantage points. Was there a point like that for you where you kind of just realized, hey, I can do a lot more for God than what I'm doing right now?
Yeah. When Kristen and I had been married for probably a year and a half or so, and we had both kind of come to a point where, we would go to church and stuff, but I wouldn't say, we definitely weren't active and we weren't focused, if you will. We were churchgoers. I think that's the best way to say it. And there was a lot of stuff going on, and I remember both of us just sat down and kind of asked the question, what are we doing? And so that was a point that we both thought we need to get more involved. There's more that we need to do as a couple. And so we did, and it just kind of grew from there. And it wasn't until you brought up Steve Schinnerer earlier. Steve Schinnerer came and began preaching at Cherokee Hills, where I had grown up and gone to church my entire life. And he joined the work there, began preaching, and kind of began to show me a little bit more of the way to get involved. And I began to see ministry from a whole different standpoint. I had thought about preaching before, but it was just a thought. It never was anything more than that, and certainly never anything I thought I would move on. And it wasn't until I got a glimpse of, hey, this is what this is. And he asked me to preach one time, and he said, I got 3 months to go. There's a Sunday night. Why don't you, he'd been pushing me to do it for a while. He said, why don't you, what do you think about preaching? And I finally said yes. And so for 3 months, I was scared to death, whatever, and went through that sermon. I'm sure it was horrible. Everybody was probably going, hopefully he will never preach again. But I got up there, man, I'm praying the whole way to that pulpit. And whenever I got done, I'd already been doing a lot of different things. I was a deacon at that point. I was, trying to teach Bible class, growing that kind of stuff. And I'm really liking doing that. So I'm getting more involved. But it wasn't until that moment that I stepped down from those stairs, from that stage after preaching my first lesson, that I thought, this is all that I want to do. And from that moment forward, my mind was just ministry focused. And I knew, like you said, there's a lot more that I can do. And for me, and this is probably just my own ignorance, but I just didn't know that there was more that I could do. There are other people doing things. I haven't gotten involved in that. I show up, I serve on the Lord's table, I, help out with youth activities, I teach class, but he kind of opened my eyes that there's more to this. And once I saw that, it just kind of opened the door. I said, okay, I can do more, but it helped me to realize this is what I love. And I had a great passion for it, and it just kind of lit that fire that was trying to light, if you will. And I knew that's it. So, I didn't stop secular work at that point. I continued on working, and it wasn't until just a couple of years ago that I gave secular work up. But I had been very involved in youth and family ministry, and then we've been here in Hydro preaching full time for it'll be 9 years this year. So, yeah, kind of the same deal. Once you realize I want to do, this is what I want to do. I want to teach the gospel. I want to share it. I want to help people grow. That just became a passion.
Yeah. And for me, it gives your life so much more meaning and purpose. Not to say that you can't have that without ministry.
Sure.
I would also argue that everyone has a ministry. If you're a Christian, you're
Absolutely.
engaged in some ministry. Especially if you're married and have kids, good grief, that's a ministry. I mean, your job at that point is to be the spiritual leader of that household, and that's a ministry. You have a ministry of self. If you don't take care of yourself, then you're woefully wrong on that one. You've got to draw yourself closer to God, and you've got to work on that. It doesn't come naturally.
Yeah.
But from a time standpoint, if you want to have more purpose in your life, there's this incredible opportunity, and I would argue a need. We are living in a time where if you want job security, go into ministry. We need so many more people in ministry. There's the term that we call it, and I don't really like the term because I think ministry is so much more than a pulpit, but there's so many empty pulpits in our country. There are a lot of churches out there who do not have a full-time minister.
Yeah.
And in some environments, I think that's okay. But there's also, we have this incredible opportunity to capitalize on this harvest, and we just need more workers. We need more people to bring in that harvest.
Yeah.
And to kind of put their hand to the plow and move forward.
Well, I love what you said, that when we talk about ministry, you were probably already working in quote unquote ministry before you decided to do it in more of a full-time manner. And that was me. Anything and everything that I could be involved in, I wanted to be involved in. There was, I didn't want to waste any time. And that's kind of my personality too, I guess, is when I'm in, I'm all in, and you're getting everything. And that's just kind of always been me. And it kind of drives me nuts if I can't do that, and I struggle with that. So, that can also be a fault. So let's just make that clearer. But I think that you brought up a really good point, that ministry is not about being paid. You do have people who go into it in more of a full-time manner or even a part-time manner, and due to their work, they're supported by a congregation or maybe a nonprofit or a work or something. But like you said, everybody's in a ministry. And once you realize that you can have or do ministry, wherever you're at right now, that really does change the game. You can make a difference where you are, whether that's in your home. And I know that sometimes we don't feel like that's really ministry in our home. You feel like you want to do more. And I really do honestly get that thought process. But that is the most important ministry that we have, is at home. I would argue that there is no greater ministry than that. To protect your family, to lead them spiritually. We go back to that Deuteronomy chapter 6 model that Moses was to teach the law of the Lord to their sons and to the sons' sons. And that was to promote, the same idea that, you talked about practicing the way with that book, this book, Anchorman, generational faithfulness. There is nothing greater than that. And it starts with yourself, and then you've got to minister and teach your children. So that is the greatest ministry that there is. But outside of that, there's so many things that you can do, whether it's with youth, whether it's with, some of the older folks, whatever. I got a very close, he's family, is what he is. He's there at North MacArthur, Jeff Lemon. Once he retired, well, he's always kind of done this, but especially after he retired from his work, he knew what he wanted to do, and he's done it ever since. And he has ministered to several older families, families that are in need, individuals who are in need. He day after day after day helps to take care of some of the needs of my grandparents. And in my opinion, there's a lot of great preachers out there. There's a lot of great college ministers out there. There's a lot of great ministers that are out there that we're dedicating all of our time. But I think probably some of our greatest ministers in the church are people like him, who are doing the things that nobody else sees and helping those who have the greatest needs. And so ministry is not just defined by, by a paycheck. And it'd probably be healthy for all of us to realize that, as we go into ministry.
Yeah. Paycheck or even job title too.
Sure.
I know there are times where I'll be doing something and I have a fleeting thought that says, this isn't my job. This isn't within my requirements of being here at North MacArthur. And then I think, what was the job title of Jesus, right? He tended to everybody. Yeah. And sometimes we can really handicap what God is doing through us whenever we isolate our ministry to just a job title. Yeah. No, it goes so much more beyond just a job title. Ministry is this catch-all for service, for helping people.
Yeah. I think in some people's minds, I don't know, you may correct me if I'm wrong, but I think some people have, trying to figure out how to say this, they hold ministry up as to what it was back in 1950, 1960, that, ministers are these, I don't know, maybe it's just a perception now. It might not have been like this. I don't know. I didn't live back then. But it does seem that it's at least a perception, right? That the preachers are perfect, that they have it all figured out, that, they're just these people that we put high on a pedestal, and that perception has kind of come down through the generations. I don't know that it's as big of a deal now, at least where we are. But I think that perception was there. And I think in some ways, one, if those ministers were truly living, in a righteous way and striving to do right in every way, then that's great, man. That's a great personification of your character, and that legacy should live on. But if it's not, and we're just holding them up because they've got the suit and tie on, and then that presents a problem. So ministry is, I think sometimes we get in our head that ministry, like you were saying, is just one thing. Like, I'm the preaching minister here. Well, suit and tie, preaching every Sunday, that's all that I do. Man, that other than the suit and tie deal, which I do wear suits, time to time. I don't wear a suit all the time. Sometimes I wear a jacket with no tie. Sometimes, whatever. I just really try to be comfortable. I don't think it really matters. Present myself well, right? But if that was it, this would be so much easier. Just work on your sermon, get up there, preach it, and then you're done for whatever. And I think that's probably where the whole you only work 4 hours a week kind of deal comes in. But there's so much more to it.
I remember, and I think that's a modern perception too, that some people have of ministry, is that you're just in the office all week and that you're just reading and writing and then preaching, and that's all it entails. And the best ministers that I know have always been outside of the office. There's time to study and there's time to sit down and to focus on your lessons and to pray through those and to have something substantial to provide to the church. But ministry is, I have lately been saying, ministry is a blue collar job where you have to roll up your sleeves, and there's times where you're getting dirty. There's times where you're helping people with things, but you're building up relationships and making those friendships. And there's, again, some of those moments where you're in the office. I remember when I first started preaching school at Bear Valley, one of the ladies of the congregation, she didn't mean this in a negative way. I had gone and preached at a local smaller congregation, and I think they paid me like $100 or something like that. And it was great for a preaching student. That's just great anyways. The fact that someone would be willing to pay to have you come out and be with their congregation. And her comment was, well, $100 for only speaking for 30 minutes, that's a pretty good pay rate. It's like, you don't understand how long it took to develop that sermon and to study for that lesson and everything else. Not that we are in ministry for the money, but people often don't see everything else that's working behind the scenes. And I would even argue that, at least for me, my lessons, they're not comprised of only me sitting down with scripture and pulling out from that. There's some life experience that's being brought into some of those lessons as well. And the only way to have those life experiences is to be with people and to kind of have your fingers on the pulse of what's going on in our culture, in our society, and even in the life of the church. I think that's why people like C.S. Lewis were so efficient in their writing, is because they knew what was going on in their church and in their family and in the lives of the people that surrounded them. So definitely some negative perceptions of ministry is that you only work on Sundays and Wednesdays and you just sit there in your office and all you do is read and write. And it's like, maybe some, I don't know, if that's the case, they're really missing out.
Yeah.
But
yeah, there's definitely a lot to it. And like you said, as far as a lesson goes, that lesson, I don't know, you probably experienced this as well, but there are some lessons that I've given that are, it's kind of weird to say this, but they're 2 or 3 years in preparation.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. And I'm not saying that you're studying for that particular lesson for 2 or 3 years, right? But there are some lessons, that you give that are so centrally focused toward you, and you're trying to share, those things with other people, what you've learned, maybe even how it's impacted you, and you're probably not wording it that way. You're wording it toward everybody else and toward the group and helping them, but it's so centrally focused that you're speaking on kind of the culmination of what has gone on in your life over the last 2 or 3 years, what you've studied, what you've learned, and you're putting it into a lesson that's given on Sunday morning, or even at a lectureship or at a wherever you're speaking. And so there's a lot of self-reflection, and as far as preachers go, and I tell you what, man, there's been some Sundays that it was really, 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 really hard to preach because of what's going on with me and, in my life, whether there's some pain going on, there's some hardship going on, some trial going on, whatever, it can be really hard. And so, there's a lot. Ministry is a very heartfelt job. And if you're not struggling in ministry, you're probably not doing it right. Yeah. To be honest about it. So let's talk a little bit more about maybe to get them out of the way, the negative perception of ministry in general, because maybe some folks who are watching this are thinking about ministry, but like you said, there's some negative feedback that's coming back to them. Don't get into ministry because of it's not you can't get paid. There's no money in it. There's blah, blah, blah. There's all kinds of negative perceptions out there about ministry in general. And I should add, there's a lot of that about every kind of job. So I don't think this one rises to the top by any means. But I know that there are people who will try to, hinder somebody from going into the work of ministry. And I still don't get that as to why they do that. But it is out there. And so for, you who are listening or watching, if you're thinking about going into ministry, you're going to encounter those in anything that you go to. But let's just kind of think about, are there some things that you've heard, experienced, somebody told you outside of what you just said, they kind of cast a negative shadow over ministry, or things you've heard that would drive people away from it?
Yeah, I think the big one coming up right now in our culture is burnout in ministry.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a lot of guys step away from ministry because they're completely burned out. Ministry presents so many opportunities, and the struggle with that is, I would say most of those, if not all of those opportunities, are ministry. It doesn't devalue or discount that it's a ministry opportunity. The problem is, as a minister, you think that you can just take on everything and say yes to everything. And it really takes self-control and discipline to start saying no to some of those things. Because, number one, you don't have to say yes to everything. If you did, you're going to burn out. And B, I believe in quality over quantity, especially in ministry. Sometimes we get so concerned with how many baptisms did we have this year, and how many studies did we have, and how many kids were at VBS, and have we broken any records, and all those things. And goodness, that's such a corporate way of looking at things. And we've taken the business model and we've unfortunately kind of brought that into what should be a family model, right, within the church. Christ calls us the family. He calls us his brothers and sisters. Like, that's what we are. So rather than numbers, it should probably be on like, how well is everyone doing? Great that you can get people to sit in a pew, but how are they doing? Do they need help? Do they need something that we can do to provide for them? So I think one of the biggest negatives in ministry that is a perception, but also a reality, is the burnout. Now, I'll say on the flip side, if you can learn how to say no and kind of throttle what you're doing in your ministry and have a control on that, it's the most rewarding pursuit you can have in this life. It's the greatest occupation, something that occupies your time, that fills your time. It's the best. Because there is nothing that you will do in this life that will impact eternity more than your ministry.
Right.
And it's an invitation that God has called us into. When Jesus calls us to take his yoke, right, in Matthew chapter 11, he's asking us to work with him. Right. We've got this huge field that needs work. Stop working on your own. Work with him. So it's such a great opportunity to touch eternity, and to play a role in that.
Yeah, I agree. There's nothing as fulfilling as ministry, but at the same time, and I will say this, that it really is unfortunate. It's a tragedy, really, that we have guys who are burning out. And I think that burnout is a very real thing. And I will equally say that you can burn out on anything that you do. So, realize, as for those listening, that you're listening to two guys. And if Corey was here, you'd be listening to three guys that can tell you that burnout can happen in secular work and it can happen in ministry. It just is a reality. You can get burnt out on anything. And I think that as you go throughout ministry and you're figuring out, I think there's a lot of things that when you step into actually doing this full time or even part time or even just, I guess in any regard, you're gonna figure out what your passion is. You're gonna figure out what you want to do, where you want your focus to be. Right? There's an element of understanding what your gift is, and we've talked about our gifts several times throughout these 2 seasons. And so once you figure out what that gift is, what your passion is, I think that everybody, regardless of who you are, wants to go all in with everything. And the ability to learn what your limit is important, but also to learn what your situation is important. Your limit in saying yes to everything, you're going to overload yourself, and you're not going to realize it until you realize it. And when you realize it, it's going to be right in the middle of everything going on. And those are things that you have to learn from to learn your limits. But also, everybody has a season of life. And I'll tell you right now that I have, over the past couple of years, I've been learning what season of life that I'm in. And there are things more and more that I'm realizing there are some things that I may need to step away from currently, and there are some things that I need to start saying no to because the season of life that I'm in, my boys are very busy with sports, and I want to be involved with that. We're involved in, a lot of spiritual activities, camps, preacher training camps, lads to leaders. There's a lot of things that are going on, some which are ministry related, some that are not. And to be honest, there are some things that I want to do, and I hope that nobody takes this the wrong way. There are some things that I want to do with my family that have nothing to do with ministry outside of my family. I want to take a break. I want to go somewhere and do something different to just kind of sit back and relax. And all of those are healthy things. But you have to kind of come to a level of understanding, right, where that is. And maybe, some people are different. But to come to a point where, like you said, to realize it is okay to step back. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to say no. And I think for a lot of guys, they feel so bad about telling somebody no that they just don't know how to handle that. And so, there's a level of growth that everybody has to experience to be able to figure out how to maneuver through this. But if you think about it from a secular standpoint, if somebody asks you to do something over what you have to do, you'd probably have no problem saying, no, I can't do that. You need to go find somebody else. But ministry is just different, right? It's just, there's a different feel, there's a different persona, there's a different understanding, there's a different mentality about it, I think. And it really just does get hard. But knowing that it's okay.
Well, and ministry is so interesting too, because maybe this is a negative and a positive. I feel like you need to be able to gauge yourself, but also don't underestimate yourself.
Sure.
So kind of two examples. First example, I remember there was someone while I was in school who was really trying to pull me to a certain part of the world for mission work. And while I was kind of, entertaining that idea, I realized that's not who I am, and that's not where I could be effective, if that makes sense. There was a point where I had to realize that will work for someone else, but for me, I wanted and probably even needed to be closer to home than that.
Yeah.
And there are some people who they can go around the world and it doesn't bother them a single bit. Maybe they don't have as close of a relationship with their family. Maybe they just have a different way of looking at things. But that's just not me. And so I had to realize, just because I say no to that doesn't mean that I'm not doing God's work or that I'm not going to where he's called me. There's, good grief, there's 1,000 callings out there in terms of where you want to go. You take your pick. All of them need help. We're not living where it says like, oh, America's full of preachers, you got to go somewhere else. No, there's tons of places that you can go.
Yeah.
And so I think there's an opportunity there that says, where can I go where I can still enjoy my life and be comfortable to a point that I can be efficient in my ministry? There are places in this world that I know if I go, I'm going to curl up, probably crawl in a fetal position and not be efficient in my ministry.
Yeah.
And to some degree, I think that's a waste of talent and a waste of time.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, though, right? Because there might be a digression from that thought. I never thought I was going to be in college ministry. If you had told me 5 years ago or 10 years ago, hey, you're going to go and do college ministry, no, that's not me. I don't even know if I'll click with that age group.
Yeah.
Especially in Oklahoma. Like I'm a Colorado boy. I have no business being in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I could have given you all the excuses in the world like Moses did. Well, don't underestimate yourself. And I think everything is worth trying at least once. So we tried it, ended up loving it. And it shocked me and it shocked Natalie. And we realized, man, we're in such a blessed position with this ministry and with this church family. Well, we would have never known that had we never taken the chance and had faith in God to do that.
Yeah.
So it's a weird balance that you have in ministry of knowing yourself, of trying something and saying, okay, I really don't think that I can do that. And there are those opportunities that I think would absolutely just devastate someone.
Yeah.
But then there are those opportunities where you think, no, that's not for me. Give it a shot, right? Go try it. And if you don't like it, that's fine. No one's going to blame you. You can leave. Nothing is forever except for eternity. And so, yeah, if you're only there for a year or 2 years or whatever, fine. At least you did some good there.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised. Maybe you find yourself in a position that you say, man, I could see ourselves being in here forever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important for people to know that the horror stories that are out there are, they're the voice that's crying out and scaring everybody. But the success story, the better stories, I think, far outweigh the horror stories, if that makes any sense. That everybody, I say everybody, that there are people out there who are like, don't go into ministry. You're going to be there and things are going to go wrong if you don't please, all the elders' wives or, whatever. Everybody's got their thought process on that. But, if you don't do things exactly right, then somebody's going to go against you and they're going to fire you. Well, you know what? That may be the case. And that may happen. And I got no problem saying that, I've been through that. And I know others who have been through that. And, there are some people out there, no matter whether you're in secular work or ministry, that could happen. So, just realize no matter what you do, that could happen, but it doesn't mean that it will. I know of more men who have been in one place longer and had great success in those places than I do people who are going on about the horror stories. And I think, and I'll honestly say this, that I think every minister has one story that, there's something that went on that was a big deal. And to a degree that really stinks that you have to go through something like that. But in another regard, if you look at it from a positive standpoint, it could be a great blessing that you went through that. And now, you're better equipped to handle certain situations, whatever. So, you can look at every situation in a negative or positive way, but it can happen everywhere. And I can, we can probably both name individual names right now that have been in one place for 10 plus years. And the other thing that you always hear is, well, there's no money in ministry. Well, again, there are situations where the congregation probably cannot afford to pay you a salary. And I guarantee you that both you and I right now can tell you where those places are. They're in places of every state that are, typically they're out in the rural, people are migrating to the city, stuff like that. And or it's a place that has just had thing after thing after thing that's happened and they've never corrected it for whatever reason, right? So there are places out there. But again, there are businesses out there that have done the same thing. So I think thinking about this in a good and healthy way from the right perspective is to know that no matter what you do in life, there is good and bad that can happen. The horror stories are there, the good stories are there. So can you make money in ministry? Yes, you can. Can you support your family in ministry? Yes, you can. Can you, even retire as a minister? Well, yes, you can. And I can say that my grandpa is one of those people. He retired in ministry, and did he have to prepare for it? Yeah, he did prepare for it. But it's the same thing in secular work. You have to prepare for it. If you don't save, you don't have anything in the end. It's just, natural things to talk about. So, I think there to untie from a standpoint that only looks negative at that work, and to think about it from a logical standpoint, I think is a very healthy thing to do. Yep.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest encouragements that I can give in ministry too is I realized that I needed ministry. Sometimes we think that we go into ministry because people need us, But one of my biggest realizations was that I needed ministry.
Mm.
When I was working full time, not in ministry, it was so easy to get caught up in the world and to be tempted by the world and to have worldly thoughts. That happened to me a ton. And I tell people all the time, some people will come up and I'm just so grateful that God called you to ministry or whatever. I'm not anyone special. In fact, I think that I'm probably maybe even weaker in my mind than some people. Ministry has given me the opportunity to where I can spend way more time in scripture and way more time in spiritual conversations that I could in a different work. And that has blessed my life significantly.
Yeah.
And I hope that it'll bless my family as well in turn with that. And so even to the argument, well, it doesn't make money. Like what you said, it'll make enough money that you can get by. You're not going to be starving. There's going to be times where it's tight. But I would rather be monetarily tight, something that, I could make up on the side if I went and got a side job or whatever, rather than be spiritually malnourished. And that was the decision that I made, is no matter where I go, I want to be in a position where I can grow spiritually.
Yeah.
No, I think there's also jobs out there where you can have both, where you can be very well taken care of by your church. I think those are becoming more popular because churches are realizing that people are leaving ministry because of finances. When you can go work at Costco and make more money than someone who's slaving away 55, 60 hours a week in ministry, that'll deter some people. So I think churches are maybe kind of understanding that and bringing that in. But even then, I think that's a huge blessing. I mean, I could very well go pick up a second job in the evenings and we'd be very comfortable with where we're at. But again, realizing that there's more to this life than just money.
Yeah. And I think there's an element of the danger of comparison with that too.
Oh yeah.
That
Yep.
You've got somebody in your congregation that's doing very well for themselves. Maybe they're in a specialized field and they got a lot going on, right? Well, that's great. That's great.
Yep.
They went into that field. That's what they want to do. There's nothing wrong with that. But you cannot be comparing yourself and your financial situation to everybody else. And that goes for every walk of life. You just can't do that. If you do that in any regard, you are going to have a lot of bad days ahead of you. So, you can live comfortably. There are ways that you can, make extra money, but there are ways you can make extra money in secular work as well. And I think that there's, you got to be at a place that you're not living above your means. That's always something, no matter what you're doing, that you've got to think about. So, you can't go to a small congregation and expect that you're going to make $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year. You just can't do that. If you go to a large congregation, there's a possibility you can make a pretty good salary. So, I think what we're ultimately getting at is that you don't have to be poor and preach at the same time.
Right.
And I'll say this, that I think there are a lot of opportunities out there. I hate this phrase, bivocational. It drives me crazy. And I think that there are a lot of, I know that there are some out there who look at the bivocational preacher and say, think that he's second rate. He's not as good. We're doing this full time, right? Get that out of your head. If you have the opportunity that you can help a congregation out, be a part of that, help them to grow and be their preacher and have a secular job at the same time, man, that's awesome. You go do that and you keep on doing that. And if it works out that you can, do one and, if you choose to go full time with that congregation, you've done a great job. They've grown. They can support you. Do it. That's what you want to do. Great. If you want to keep doing what you're doing, great. It doesn't really matter because ministry is not defined to the pulpit. It's not defined, to the office in the church building. So, I did that for a long time, and I admire a lot of guys who've done it a lot longer than I did it. And I think that that is a great, great thing to do. And I encourage more and more people to do that. It helps congregations out, and it can help you out financially. That's another source of income as well, that they can pay you a little bit each week, whatever. I think that's a great thing. So
Yep.
I think the positives, as we lead probably into the anchor thought, Tyler, that you'll give us here in a minute, I think that the positives of ministry all around far outweigh the negatives.
Oh yeah.
So I'll turn it over to you and I'll be quiet for a little bit.
Yeah. This has kind of been on my mind for a while. Well, at least for the last week, even more than that. Bear Valley Bible Institute just had their graduation this last weekend, and I was able to go out and just congratulate all those students, and excited to see where they'll go in their future and what God will do with them. But I was reminded of the blessing of ministry and that excitement of graduating from somewhere like Bear Valley, and to see all the ways that God is going to bless the lives of those people. One of the things that I had talked to them about was the Hebrew word olam. You can find it in Daniel chapter 12 and verse 3, but Daniel is a tricky book to keyword in, because you have some Aramaic, which is very similar to Hebrew. But you'll find a similar phrase to the Hebrew equivalent of olam, which means forever, in Daniel chapter 2, Daniel chapter 4, Daniel chapter 6. This word keeps reappearing, and it's used in the context of, O king, live forever. They were wanting the king, or his name or his legacy, to live forever, but Daniel would point out in Daniel chapter 2, verse 44 and following, that there's really only one avenue to forever, and that's through God's kingdom. God would set up a kingdom that would destroy all the other kingdoms of this earth, that would surpass the test of time, that would go into eternity. When you look at Daniel chapter 12, you then kind of have this grand finale, as it were, of this incredible vision that Daniel's been given. And he says, those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. You think about what you do in your ministry, and it goes beyond just this world. It goes beyond your life. It goes beyond the time that we're living in. When I was teaching Ecclesiastes with the college students, one of the harsh realities that we find in Ecclesiastes is that generations pass away. I asked them, how many of you know your grandparents' names? All of them raised their hand. How many of you know your great-grandparents' names? Some hands went down. What about your great-great-grandparents? Even more hands went down. And then even beyond that, how many of you could tell me the names, the occupations, and the siblings of your great-great-great-grandparents 4 or 5 generations away? Nothing. And one of the realities that we have in this life is that no one will likely know my name in 5 generations. I would be impressed if anyone knew my name in 3 generations. Our names fade away so quickly. Our work fades away so quickly. Our lives fade away so quickly in this world. But Daniel assures us in Daniel chapter 12 and verse 3 that those who turn many to righteousness are like the stars forever. Well, why is that? It's because when we engage in ministry, we engage in an opportunity of helping change eternity and bringing others to God. There is nothing more meaningful or more powerful in this life than to be engaged in ministry of some sort. If that's ministry in a church, if that's ministry in your family, if that's ministry to yourself, ministry is an incredible opportunity to work with God.
Love it. That is a great. That even adds a little bit more to, the temporariness of life. I think more, when it comes to pride and all that stuff. We think we're important, but to know that in a few generations, you may not ever know who you are. I think the only person who's going to be known, right, outside of Jesus in the Bible, people in the Bible, the only person that's going to be known in several generations is Michael Jordan. Probably never going to. That's going to be the only name.
Yeah.
Like, do you remember back in the 1900s and 2000s, that Michael Jordan guy? He's still the greatest player ever. Nobody will have a clue.
Yeah.
Might be the only one. No, that's a great thought, man. I really do appreciate that. And I think that, I can speak on behalf of both of us. And I think that we can both speak on behalf of Corey, that there is no greater work to be a part of than the work of the Lord.
Yep.
And I think that all three of us would say, if you have the opportunity, go for it. Don't turn away from it. Don't listen to anybody else. If you have a heart for ministry, go do it. I continue to love what it says in Ezra 7 and verse 10, that he set his heart to study the law of the Lord, to practice it, and to teach it. And people who have that realization within their life and they develop that passion, if they don't do it, then it prevents transformation from ever happening in the souls of those around you. And if you see the outcome of what happened with Ezra, it's very, very powerful. The outcome of what happened with Paul, very, very powerful. And it was because he acted upon his convicted heart.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know there's people out there who try to detour others away from going into ministry. You don't get this, you don't get that. You want to have benefits, you want to have insurance. Well, I know a lot of preachers who have insurance. No, there's benefits out there. Everybody has opportunity to have those things, but, there's no greater work than this. And in whatever way you can be a part of it, do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Tyler, any other closing thoughts that you have before we call this thing good?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Get into ministry. We need you.
Get into ministry. There are a lot of great places that you can go to if you want more learning. You can do it in a number of ways. We highly encourage that. We've mentioned Bear Valley. There's Freed Hardeman. There's Heritage. There's a number of them. World Video Bible School. A number of them out there that you can go to, be a part of. Some that are free, some that you have to pay a little bit. Whatever. If you're wanting to know more, go for it. We just encourage it. So if there's any way that we can be of help to you, if we can encourage you even more to go into ministry, let us do that and reach out to us. If you have any questions, we can surely point you at least in the right direction in order to do that. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to inquire. Don't be afraid to step into something new. Ministry is great. When you jump into new opportunities, great things can happen. And if we can do the same work that Jesus did, I think that's pretty cool. So that's just a great thing. Well, that is it for our show today. This is season 2, episode 15. And we have one more show this season. We will have it next week, and then we will take the summer off and then come back to you in the fall. So we do appreciate greatly your time with us today. We sure did miss Corey. Hopefully he'll be able to be back with us next week. And so if Corey's tuning in and listening to what all we had to say, hopefully you don't think we butchered it too bad, Corey, and we do love you. But hopefully you'll be back with us next week. And for all you who are tuning in whatever way that might be, we do thank you for joining us for this episode. So we do want to continue to let you know that if you are wanting to view this first, you can go to Excel TV, subscribe there, and you can check out all of our content, growing content on our streaming service that will bless you in a number of different ways. Outside of that, you can see this also every Thursday at noon on YouTube. You can also listen to this every Thursday on all of your major podcasting platforms. So you want to check that out. I do want to make a quick announcement. I can't remember if I did this last week or not, but I'm going to do it again anyway. That I'm very excited to announce that there is a new podcast on the Excel Pod Network, which is entitled Road Trips with Tyler Wall. And so Tyler is in his 5th season with this. We have all the episodes here on the Excel Pod Network. To check all that out, you can go to our website, ESM or excelstonmore.net, and go to the Excel Pod page, and there it will be. You can check out all those. Great conversation, very good interviews that he has done. Just dropped one this week with Sam McClarty. That will publish every Monday at noon. So with all that being said, we hope that the Lord will continue to bless you in your daily walk with him. We do thank you for watching and tuning in with us. We hope that you'll like, share, subscribe, and follow this episode or this podcast and help this podcast to grow in every way. So until next time, stay untied.